let's take a look at the PowerShell script for RoyalTS that allows you to easily import your Active Directory computer connections into RoyalTS. So I created a dynamic folder file for you to be able to import. So I'm going to go ahead and import that here. And it says import successful. There's some notes here on how to configure the script itself. And I'll show you in what dialog to configure those settings. But the big thing to notice that's different between this script and a lot of the other scripts I've seen so far, the only setting you will need to configure within this dynamic folder setting window itself right here is potentially this config file name under the custom properties. If you leave config file name at to do instead of changing it to something else, the script will create and use a settings file called settings.xml. If you're going to be using multiple instances of this script in one of your documents or across multiple documents, you'll just want to change this value to something else. So if I want to call it settings1.xml. Now, the big advantage that this is over a lot of the other dynamic folder scripts that I've seen is that this allows these settings to be persistent inside of your user profile, even if you were to delete or lose these documents. All you would have to do is on re-import, just change this config file name to one of your other config files. You wouldn't have to reset up everything again from scratch. And that's going to become kind of cool, especially once you see all the things that we have to set up here the first time we run this. So let me go ahead and run this the first time. And you'll notice the first time we come up, this is going to be a blank. Well, it's not a blank screen fully, but all the fields are blank. So what we need to do is we need to start filling this data in. So let me go ahead and start filling this data in. And we want this, in this case, to be a remote desktop connection. And that's just what we're going to start with. And we want it to be an admin console connection, just because that's what I want. So as you notice here, in domain name, this is going to be the name of your domain that you're going to be querying. And when you do that, this is going to go out and try to find out what kind of the root of the domain is and what your primary domain controller is. If these fields fill in, this means that everything is good to go. It's able to query AD, it's able to work with it. Life is good. If these don't fill in, that means we got some connectivity issues, credential issues, something like that, and needs to kind of be looked at. But with these filled in, what this is telling me is now I have communication with Active Directory and I can continue on working on these other things. Now, notice here, I have a bunch of connection types, and these are all different connection types that are within RoyalTS. I don't have every connection type listed here. There's some that it'll take me a little bit of time to get working out fully. But I think for an initial release, this is pretty good. Now notice as I go around and I pick different settings, my default port values are going to change. And those are the default port values that you would typically use. However, you can, if you need to, based on your environment, change that right here under the port number. And depending on what you use, what connection you use, different settings will appear or disappear. So in this case, Windows process connection, the option to use SIM or not pops up. But if I move that back down to remote desktop connection, I get the port number, and if this is an admin/console connection. The credential name field is the name of a credential within RoyalTS. In this case, I'm going to be using this PD test credential. And what this will do is this will assign every connection that's created to use the PD test credential. I don't have to worry about folder inheritance or setting other settings. This will set it for me automatically. Now next, search base. If I click this little button right over here, this brings up a graphical representation of my OU structure. So I can say I want all my servers under enterprise servers to come in. I want to search subtree, and you can choose between base and one level. More than likely, you're going to be using subtree for this. And my filter is going to be asterisk or all. You can do other filters in here, which the Active Directory commandlets would recognize, such as name like test, if I wanted to do that. So all my servers that started with the name test would only come up. But for this video here, I'm going to do this. And then I go ahead and submit. Now notice when I hit submit, it went through, it created the JSON file, and now all my servers came in. So now if I open up one of these servers here, notice PD001 on port 3389, and it's an admin session. And it's going to be using the credential PD test. Okay, that's kind of cool. But what if I go in here and I hit reload, right? If I don't mouse over this window within 5 seconds, it's going to assume that those settings are correct and I want to use those again. And then it will automatically go through, close the window, and proceed to load in the server data. This time I'm going to change it up a little bit. So just to show that these ports are being updated. Obviously, I'm not using port 4000. But if I was, I would be able to do that very quickly on these servers that were imported in. And let's say I wanted to change these around from remote desktop connections to VNC connections. Notice, hey, VNC connection. That's pretty awesome. And I didn't have to do a whole bunch of crazy work. I didn't have to come in here, change the script around. I didn't have to come here, change my custom properties around. I didn't have to worry about any of that. Now, let's say I close this document without saving it. Typically, if you did that with the dynamic folder, you'd have to reset all your settings. Well, in this case, I set this. I re-imported it. I set this to settings1.xml because that is the name of the file that is under RoyalTS Dynamic Folder Customizer under my app data folder. So settings1.xml. And now if I reload, look, all those settings are still there. I didn't have to re-enter all of them. That is cool. And again, I can go ahead and change this. So I'm going to change this back to remote desktop connection. I don't want that as an admin console connection. 3389, submit. And here we go. 3389, and it's not a console or admin session, and my credentials are still set at PD test. So, like I said, you can also have multiple of these. Whoops, I imported that in the wrong way. I'll just import again. Again, not important. And so I'm going to call this settings 2. And you do not have to have the .xml after it. That's not a requirement. So now if I run this, notice I have a blank setting again. That means it's time for me to set this up from scratch, which would allow me to, here I'll actually do this, name like, I want this to search everything in enterprise servers. And notice it only pulled back 2 servers because they're the only ones that have test in their name. Well, that start with test. Let me rephrase that. RoyalTS computer is there, but I don't have it asterisk test asterisk. I have it test asterisk. That's why it's showing it like that. So there you go. There's a wonderful little script I've been working on. Hope it's helpful to you. It's been helpful to me, I know, at work. As I've been doing that, I can now quickly change up my queries without having to redo all my settings, which is helpful for me. So hopefully it's helpful for you. I hope to continue to provide some updates to it, but if there's anything specifically that should be updated on it or a new feature that should be added to it, let me know. Shouldn't be too bad, I would imagine, to add it in, but I'm always willing to take feedback. So thank you. Have a good one.